We've got the Defence Secretary standing by. We welcome Grant Shapps to the programme and we say good morning to him. We'll say goodbye to you for now and come back to the papers. Good morning, Defence Secretary. Thanks very much indeed for your time. A busy morning for you. This morning you'll be making an announcement to the Commons about 20,000 troops being sent to Europe. Tell us more.
Yes, that's right. This will be the biggest deployment of UK troops to NATO for about 40 years. This is an operation which is designed to essentially allow NATO to test our approach in what is, as I'll be saying in another speech this morning, a much more dangerous world given the conflicts in Europe, the conflicts in the Middle East, but also the sort of intent of people like Putin to really disrupt the world order and our way of life. And so we'll be leading that NATO exercise, which will be about 40,000 people overall.
Should we be unduly worried about this? Is this a precursor to you thinking we're going to get involved in some sort of engagement?
No, not necessarily, but we've seen what Putin is capable of. We know that he's walked into a democratic neighbor in Ukraine and caused mayhem. And sometimes it's tempting to think, well, what's this got to do with us? But we saw last year, didn't we, with that enormous spike in energy prices and the incredible cost to households here, that what happens over there really does matter here as well. And we know that Putin has the intent. So this very large military exercise involving 30 countries, 31, because it involves Sweden, who are not yet in NATO, is designed to make sure that we are ready and that we have tested our approach to anything that Putin might throw our way or anyone else in the future.
There are concerns, though, about the state of our troops, are there not? I believe there was a Sunday Times Freedom of Information request that went in, which revealed that 3 in 10 troops from the armed forces are not fully fit for combat. Numbers of them injured. And we've seen fewer of them than ever before. Sending 20,000 into Europe, does that leave us in a precarious position?
No, it doesn't. Look, I often hear a lot of sort of conflation between when you start talking about anything military. People say, well, we haven't got the number of armed forces. Well, it's true, actually. We don't sustain that vast number of troops. But when you talk about armed forces, you're talking about the ships, the planes, the ability in terms of lethality of the weapon systems that you have. And as we've seen with the conflict in Europe, which country has been first to step up and do more than any other country? The United Kingdom. We were the first people to do everything, provide training, to provide tanks, anti-tank missiles, long-range missiles. And just last week, we provided another $2.5 billion, the biggest ever package from the UK to Ukraine. So we're very capable, respected around the world because of that. And as I say, are able to actually produce 20,000 troops to lead this exercise for NATO in Europe.
Does that mean we have an appetite that perhaps others do not have for this conflict?
Well, I wouldn't say for this conflict. I would say that when it comes to it, our phenomenally dedicated, brave men and women in our armed forces are always the first to step up. It's one thing to have a military or even talk about the size of a military. And by the way, we're spending over £50 billion, which is a record in terms of the amount of money that we're spending on our own defence. But when it actually comes to being needed, the difference with the UK military is we are up for it. And we saw last week with the pictures you're showing at the moment, how when it came to the Houthis in the Red Sea, it was the United Kingdom that stepped up with the US to actually do something about the fact that international shipping was grinding to a halt in the Red Sea.
I want to ask you about NATO. Clearly, by sending 20,000 troops, this is a vote of confidence in the organisation. Trump takes a different view on it. If he's re-elected, the MI6 boss here has been warning that that could be a threat to our national security as a result of his views on NATO. So how worried should we be, given that this morning you're telling us that Putin is a huge menace and that you think we need to be supporting NATO?
Well, look, first of all, I think it's worth saying that Putin, was walked into Ukraine. I don't suppose he was thinking that the next response by Western countries would be to enlarge NATO, and in fact, it's been growing. The second point is, though, and I think this is a fair point, everybody needs to pull their weight in NATO. Since 2014, when actually the UK hosted a NATO summit, it was agreed that countries should put at least 2% of their GDP, their gross domestic product, into defence. So NATO countries should all be contributing. And I think it is true to say there's been concern over the years that not everyone has been pulling their weight. This country does. We're one of, I think, 7 NATO countries that does do 2% and more. But of course, the pressure needs to be spread. And I think, and this is what I'll be saying in the speech later, people are starting to realize the world is a dangerous place right now. There are a lot of malign actors, and we're seeing how both states and non-state actors are combining, and that is causing real problems around the world. That means we do need to invest in defense, and that means we need to do our part. We do. The United Kingdom does. We want to make sure that all of our partners do put in at least that 2%.
If you'll forgive me, that is a very good politician's answer, though. My question was, is Donald Trump, if he's re-elected, going to make it less safe in Europe, as the MI6 boss is claiming?
Well, I mean, the point I was trying to make was directly to your question, which is, if you recall, Trump was fed up that, as he saw it, the United States was putting a lot of money in, but other countries weren't pulling their weight. And I think that was what lay at the heart of this. And as I say, not getting involved in other countries' politics, that's up to them. But I do think it is true and correct that the whole world, the whole of NATO world, so that's 30 countries, need to pull our individual weights. The United Kingdom does, and I want to see other countries do the same.
Secretary of State, politics is always a dangerous place as well. We're seeing this survey in the Daily Telegraph today, which talks about Conservatives facing a 1997-style wipeout. And you, my friend, would be included in that when they look at seats that are dangerous or precarious.
Well, first of all, actually, they don't look at individual seats. That's not the methodology there, so it's not a poll of my constituency particularly. But look, everybody knows there isn't an election tomorrow. Well, we have a plan that we're working to, and that plan has started to see inflation really plummeting, the economy growing. We've seen tax cuts, which now in January have come through and worth about £450 for somebody on the average salary. And I hope we can do more in that direction. In other words, we have a plan, it's working, and it's starting to work. We'd be going right back to square one if we got Keir Starmer and Labour in. Now, you're right, here's a poll that says that if the election was today, then here's a projected outcome. The election isn't today or tomorrow, and there's time for people, I hope, to enjoy the benefits of the really difficult, tough decisions that we've had to make. It's easy to be the opposition and sit on the sidelines and snipe. We actually have to make those decisions day to day, and I think we'll start to see the benefits of that coming through to families in this country.
Well, what this poll has identified is the significant threat that reform poses to the Conservatives, and specifically 96 possible Tory losses. Isn't it time, therefore, that you listen to the right of your party, particularly on this Rwanda bill as it comes back to Parliament this week? Because otherwise you risk handing those votes and the keys, therefore, to Labour, to Downing Street.
Well, look, I think, of course, voting anyway, other than Conservative, risks handing the keys to Labour. And the problem with that is, if taking Rwanda as an example, Keir Starmer and Labour have voted against every single measure, every method we've introduced, every law to try to stop those small boats, they voted against. Now, we've been having success, and one of the most hidden secrets of the last year is small boat arrivals were down by 36%. So we've seen a big drop, a big slashing in the number of small boats. No thanks to Keir Starmer. So, my point would be a vote in any other direction doesn't stop the small boats. It doesn't achieve what you want. It lets Keir Starmer in, and he doesn't have a plan to stop those small boats. Those gains that we've seen would be lost. We'd be right back to square one. So that would be my argument against voting another way, particularly if you care about issues like stopping small boats where we're actually having success.
OK.
We finish in the time that remains to us, in the minute that remains to us, Secretary of State, about football and Gary Lineker. And the connection being with you is that he has shared a tweet calling for Israel to be punished by the world governing body for its invasion of Gaza. 20 seconds.
I don't think I can ever come on your programme without there being a Gary Lineker moment. I stick to the politics. I wish he'd stick to the football, and I think the world will be a better place.
OK.
Grant Shapps, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Appreciate it.